Congressman Fine, what are your thoughts about dealing with the Iranian threat at the timing of this operation?
Well, thanks again for having me. Look, I fully support the operation. I think that when a country screams death to America at you for 47 years, you should believe them. And when they say they're going to build nuclear weapons and delivery systems capable of sending that nuclear weapon to the United States, you can't allow it. President Trump tried to negotiate with these Muslim religious leaders. They refused to negotiate. And so this was the action that had to be taken. And America's role is very limited. It is no Navy, no rockets, no nukes. That is what the American military is focused on. And that should be something that all Americans can agree with.
Right, Congressman Fine, we know that this terror regime in Iran killed thousands of its youth, and Time magazine reported that as many as 30,000 young people could have been killed on the streets just on January 8 and 9 alone. And that's according to the Ministry of Health from Iran. Now, we also know that based on the analysis of the Defense Department data, the Obama administration dropped a total of 92,000 bombs between 2009 and 2016. And in the final year, the Obama administration dropped some 26,000 bombs alone. Now, we also know that at this stage here, Democrats are opposing President Trump, yet under the Obama administration, they were silent. It was crickets. So doesn't this show the hypocrisy within the Democratic ranks, as they don't truly care about American lives, when we realize that during the Iraq campaign, some 600 U.S. soldiers were killed, primarily connected to what Iran did with these street bombs?
Look, I think Democrats have become sick. I mean, 50 of them voted against a three-line resolution that said Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. 50 Democrats did that. They're sick. I mean, if Donald Trump tried to eliminate cancer, they would be mad that it would hurt cancer treatment centers. This is not your Democratic Party of 10 years ago. It is not your Democratic Party of 20 years ago. These are people who do not care about America, who see America as the enemy, who stand with Muslim terrorists and foreign invaders. That is their focus. That is who they care about. Destroying America is their goal.
Right. And also, President Trump has a much larger picture and a long-term strategy in mind, which is reflected in the policy of peace through strength, in containing Russia's and China's influence. By removing Venezuela's dictator Maduro and now Iran's regime leadership, President Trump is advancing world energy security and curbing China's ambition for world dominance. Then again, Iran's support of terrorist groups in the Middle East, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Houthis in Yemen, has been a constant threat, not just to Israel, but also American troops in the region and the global economy. Congressman Fine, you would think that the leaders of the Western world would immediately join U.S.-Israel Operation Epic Fury with the full support. However, there is a lukewarm response. What are your thoughts about it? Why is this happening?
Well, you would think they would support it. So look, all of these people in Europe who've been Russia's bad, Russia's bad, Russia's bad, and they are bad. Russia's main weapon against Ukraine has been suicide drones that they've gotten from Iran. By us destroying their ability to produce and sell those weapons of war, that will make Russia less able to attack Ukraine. That should be a good thing for Europe. Yet why is Europe not full-throated supporting it? I believe that the mainstream Muslim invasion of Europe has gotten so great that they now have to cater to them from a political standpoint. It was reported this week that the United States can no longer free-flowing share intelligence information with the United Kingdom. That is because Muslim leadership has infiltrated the country, and it's no longer seen as secure. So I think that is a big part of what is going on, the Islamification of the West. And it is a problem that is clearly in Europe and may be coming to the United States as well.
Congressman Fine, a recent analysis in The Spectator suggests that the U.S. views the conflict with Iran as a strategic contest where China is the ultimate target. And we all know that China was providing an economic lifeline to Iran, purchasing nearly 90% of oil and bypassing all these sanctions. And a brief statement from The Spectator, and I quote, "For years, Beijing quietly assembled a network of dictatorships and client states designed to blunt American power. Iran supplied China with cheap oil and kept Washington bogged down in the Middle East." And it also says regional proxies from Lebanon to Gaza added just enough chaos to stop Washington focusing on China. Unquote. Congressman Fine, from your perspective, as President Trump sits across President Xi at the end of this month, March 2026, will the events that took place in Venezuela and then now in Iran tilt in favor of President Trump? And will these two strategic events impact China's plans and its future?
Well, I think absolutely. I think, these two countries were working closely with China, and China was dependent on Venezuela and Iran for its oil. They will not be able to now do that. But not only were they getting oil from those countries, they were getting heavily discounted oil. Because the oil was sanctioned, Iran had to sell it at a discount. Venezuela had to sell it at a discount to get around the sanctions. This hurt the people of Iran and Venezuela. If they're going to sell their oil, they should sell it at market prices, not discounted prices. So we have now cut off a meaningful part of the Chinese access to discounted oil. They'll certainly be able to buy it on the open market like everyone else can, but they'll no longer be able to get it at these heavily discounted prices. That's a good thing for the world.
Right. And Congressman Fine, you mentioned Islamification of Europe. Shockingly, 20 miles from Washington, D.C., a mosque paid tribute to Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei after he was killed in airstrike, calling him our leader and mourning his martyrdom. And while majority of Iranian Americans were celebrating U.S.-Israel airstrikes on Iran's regime, this Virginia-based mosque organized pro-Iran regime protests in front of the White House. At the mosque, it was reported that their imam called for Allah to, quote-unquote, destroy all the non-believers. Congressman Fine, how should we address this kind of activity and conduct on the American soil?
Sure. Look, we have to accept the fact that we have a Muslim problem in America. Now, does that mean that all Muslims are terrorists? It does not. But the reverse is true. It is not fair to say that no Muslims are terrorists. And that is what the left demands of us. You gave one example in Virginia. I gave a speech on the House floor earlier this week where I shared 3 examples from Michigan, 1 example from California, 1 example from New York, the mosque that the mayor of New York visited before the Iranian attack, where he talked about how glad he was to be there right before the mainstream Muslim religious leader said Islam is the sword that we will use to slit the throats of the infidels. And then obviously we had a Muslim immigrant attack Austin, Texas, wearing a Property of Allah t-shirt or sweatshirt when he killed multiple people. This is a real problem. We have a meaningful Muslim issue in this country that we have to deal with. It starts with ending immigration from these countries. That's a bill that I've signed on to. It needs to continue with deportations of non-Americans who share these ideologies. And it will end with denaturalization and deportations of those who lied in order to become citizens but truly hate this country. But it is a real problem that we have to deal with.
And Congressman Fine, we have witnessed this unsettling development that you alluded to earlier about the NATO club or Europe in general. The Spanish government reiterated that it would not let U.S. forces use 2 joint military bases in Spain, which would certainly make a difference in our attack against Iran. And also more troubling, we discussed this issue earlier, is that EU and NATO NATO member Croatia has pushed for stronger cooperation over the years with Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism. And in the 1990s, it purchased Iranian weapons. And then last year in 2025, the U.S. Justice Department filed a civil forfeiture complaint seeking about $47 million in proceeds from the sale of nearly 1 million barrels of oil found in Croatia. And it was in Croatia's government facilities. And just this past week, Croatia's president said on Monday that he ordered the suspension of all cooperation between the Croatian armed forces and the Israeli army due to what he stated as Israel's violations of international humanitarian law. Congressman Fine, from your vantage point as a member of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee, what is your message to Croatia's politicians who benefit from us as taxpayers funding NATO, funding the defense of the Balkans, and yet eagerly stand behind Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism, and undermining U.S. efforts?
Well, I would say that what Europeans should know is this. There comes a point at which our being a member of NATO will no longer make sense. So if NATO countries choose to align themselves with Muslim terrorists, then they are not going to be aligned with us. And I think this is a growing issue we've seen in many countries, whether it's the Red-Green Alliance of the radical left and mainstream Muslim terrorism or other things. It is a real problem, and it is something that we're going to deal with. But America is not giving the world a blank check. If you're not looking out for the interests of Western civilization, then we will not look out for the interests of you.
Right, indeed. On the U.S. economic front, briefly, the Labor Department just released the data stating the loss of 92,000 jobs in February. However, the unemployment rate of 4.4% is still historically low. There are now expectations that the Federal Reserve will have to cut interest rates, which would spur investments and economic growth and bring mortgage rates down. There's also possible inflation generated by the oil prices going up. Congressman Fine, could you kindly analyze for us potential scenarios for our fellow Americans as we are getting closer to midterm elections?
Well, I think I'm feeling pretty good about the midterm elections. I think the economy is doing well. I think we're hearing that 40% of people who've turned in their tax returns at this point have gotten a benefit from President Trump's Working Families Tax Cut. They're taking advantage of one of the 4 key new benefits we put in place. I think what we're seeing with oil prices will be temporary. I mean, obviously, there's a conflict in the Middle East. It creates uncertainty, but I don't think that will be the case for too long. And I think that will be a positive. And as it relates to unemployment, I think that what we saw in that report is that employment of Americans has gone up. Employment of foreigners and government workers has gone down. That's the kind of economy I want to see. Americans getting jobs, foreigners leaving. And keep in mind, when you've got 20 to 30 illegal immigrants in the United States, that's a lot of people who need to leave and a lot of jobs that they're going to lose. So I'm not super unhappy about this report because it shows that the right people are getting jobs and the right people are losing jobs.
And your final words to our engaged listeners on America's Roundtable about the future of America and public policy with all these great reforms coming into place.
Well, I think we're at a crossroads. I mean, I think we're at a crossroads. We have one group of people, the group that I serve with, who sees an America First agenda to make America strong, vibrant, safe, and dominant in the world again, bringing freedom and opportunity and prosperity to everyone. But then we've got the Hate America group. I served with them in Congress. Again, 50 of them would not say Iran supports terrorism yesterday, something I thought everyone agreed with. That is a problem. We have people who hate America, who seek our country's destruction, want open borders, illegal immigration everywhere, are fine with Muslim terrorism, are mourning the death of the Ayatollah. I mean, this is bad. And so we have a choice as a country. Are we going to have another 250 years of American success, or are we going to collapse under those who hate the country? That is the choice that is ahead of us. It's a fight that I'm willing to make. It's a fight that we all need to be prepared to make as well.
Thank you so much for your continued leadership, Congressman Randy Fine. It's great to have you joining us on America's Roundtable.
Thank you so much, Congressman Fine.
Thank you, guys.